So look at Anthony Ryder from South Lyon, Michigan, recently selected as the Lions 2020 Fan of the Year. He has a passion about sports broadcasting.
With the 112th selection in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver, USC. One pride, baby! Yeah! What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Detroit Lions video. The Detroit Lions dominated the Green Bay Packers on Thursday Night Football to improve their record to 3-1, drop the Green Bay Packers to 2-2, and take firm control of the NFC North Division and take sole lead in the conference race. The Detroit Lions were phenomenal. They ended up winning this game 34-20, and this game was over by halftime. It was a 27-3 halftime score. The Green Bay Packers had a nice little third quarter, a little help from the referees, a little help from the Detroit Lions' mistakes, penalties, as well as miscommunications, but the Lions came back in the fourth quarter, got their stuff together, and figured out a way to close out this game and seal the 14-point victory. Now, 14 points is not reminiscent of how dominant this game was by the Detroit Lions. As I said, a 27-3 halftime score. The Detroit Lions came out early and looked amazing. Obviously, the first drive by offense wasn't great. A couple of mediocre to below average rushing attempts, and then a pick thrown by Jared Goff in our own red zone. That led to a very early 3-0 lead by the Green Bay Packers. However, after that, the Detroit Lions were pretty much flawless. The Detroit Lions in this game had over 211 rushing yards, had 5 total sacks among their pass rushers, 2 interceptions, both by the Sin cornerback, as well as dominating time of possession, holding almost 38 minutes of possession over the Green Bay Packers in this contest. Taking a look offensively, the Detroit Lions were really good. They did have a turnover. They did have a couple negative plays, but at the end of the day, they were really good. They were very efficient, and they put up 34 points on a pretty strong Green Bay Packers team, even with them missing their number 1 cornerback. The Lions held off the Packers pass rush for most of the night, and Jared Goff was able to wheel and deal a lot of very strong passes. Jared Goff on the night was 19 of 28 for 210 passing yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. The interception came on the first drive of the game, while the touchdown came on the second drive of the game and was caught by the one and only Amon-Ra St. Brown. The Detroit Lions leading wide receiver last night was Josh Reynolds, who had 3 receptions for 69 yards. Leader in catches was Amon-Ra St. Brown himself, having 5 catches for 56 yards, as well as the one and only score through the air. And then rookie Sam Laporta continues his very promising young NFL career with another 4 receptions for another 56 yards, putting him at the top of the NFL in receiving yards amongst tight ends. However, the passing game was not the story of last night, as the Detroit Lions dominated on the ground game, giving David Montgomery over 32 carries, where he rushed for over 121 yards and 3 scores on the ground. In his return from injury, he of course left week 2 versus the Seattle Seahawks a little bit early due to a thigh contusion. He returned in what was supposed to be a limited role tonight. Jahmyr Gibbs was supposed to get some more carries tonight, and David Montgomery was supposed to be more of the relief player, the goal line player, get a little bit less carries and even it out a little bit. But they said, no, sir. David Montgomery, as I said, 32 rushing attempts, 121 rushing yards, averaging 3.8 yards per carry versus a decent front 4 by the Green Bay Packers. And of course, the big storyline is the 3 rushing touchdowns, making up for some lost time, making up for the 2 games that he missed his touchdowns on. He made up for it, now has 4 touchdowns through 4 games for the Detroit Lions. Jahmyr Gibbs, the first-round pick from Alabama, was also very solid. 8 carries for 40 yards, averaging 5 yards per carry, as well as a couple receptions for a couple first downs and a couple big plays through the air. Jahmyr Gibbs is a very interesting player, right? A lot of people are upset that he's not getting more carries. A lot of people say that he's getting the perfect amount of carries. Over his first 4 games, Jahmyr Gibbs is averaging 13.5 touches per game. That includes both rushing and receptions put together. Now, to put that number into a little bit of context, that is right around the number that Christian McCaffrey had as, I believe, the 8th overall pick when he was selected as a running back out of Stanford. Christian McCaffrey averaged about 13.25 carries through his first 4 games. Jahmyr Gibbs averaging about 13.5 touches per game throughout his first 4 games of his NFL career. He is very efficient with the ball in his hands. He is a very dynamic weapon. The Packers followed him all night in motion, and he was really used as more of a distraction versus the Green Bay Packers, right? You have to account for that speed. You have to account for that playmaking ability, and that allowed the Lions to spread the defense out, make the linebackers move, and then pound the ball with David Montgomery. The Lions also had an extra rushing attempt on a trick play as Khalif Raymond had 1 rush for 40 yards to put the Detroit Lions in the red zone. And in the red zone, Jared Goff also had 2 rushes for 10 yards. Not the most exciting stat line, but Jared Goff did have a little bit of success on the ground as well, at least from his standards. As I said, the 4 touchdown scores from the 4 touchdowns scored last night were, of course, by Amon-Ra St. Brown opening things up with the scoring through the air, and then David Montgomery over and over and over again finding his way into the end zone behind a strong performance by a rejuvenated and healthy offensive line helped the Detroit Lions score 34 points and put this game away for themselves. Defensively, though, they were phenomenal. I think defense is the big storyline going into week 5. The defense was pretty good versus Kansas City. They were very bad versus Seattle. Then they came back and they were great against Atlanta. And once again, last night on Thursday Night Football, prime time action, the Detroit Lions were great once again. Rookie standout Brian Branch, and probably future defensive rookie of the year. Brian Branch totaled 7 tackles as well as a pass defended on the night. He was very good in the time that he was in the game. Unfortunately, did leave with an ankle injury, but came back and then left again. Seems as though he is going to be okay long term, but that is an ankle injury that we do want to monitor. Derek Barnes led all linebackers in tackles with 6 total. I believe did have a tackle for loss or a tackle for very minimal gain right around the line of scrimmage. I don't know if it officially counted for a tackle for loss or not, but he has been playing really, really well this season. He is having an outstanding 3rd year is what it is now for himself. He was really promising as a rookie, kind of regressed as a 2nd-year player as Malcolm Rodriguez emerged as a playmaking linebacker. But 3rd year, Derek Barnes finally has put it all together, and he has been an absolutely phenomenal linebacker for the Detroit Lions. Jerry Jacobs had some ups and downs. He was targeted 10 times, allowed 5 catches for 57 yards and a touchdown on the day, but came up with 2 interceptions and 5 tackles. He was very scrappy. The big play over the top wasn't really on him. He was in good coverage. He dove and actually got a hand on the football, which was a very strong hands catch by the Packers wide receiver. A phenomenal throw by Jordan Love, a great play by the wide receiver, not even necessarily a bad play by Jerry Jacobs. However, that is where a majority of his yards allowed came from. He did allow a touchdown with the miscommunication. I believe he was the closest defender to the guy. And of course, that means the touchdown goes to him. But he more than made up for it on an interception tipped by Alex Anzalone, as well as an interception down in the red zone to essentially ice the game for the Detroit Lions defense. The pass rush was amazing. Aiden Hutchinson, once again, back-to-back weeks, had over a sack. This time, a sack and a half on Jordan Love. Almost had 2 or 3. Had that play where he almost had the safety. Had another play where John Kaminsky ended up stealing that sack from him. He had an opportunity to get 3, even 4 sacks in that game. He was a nuisance all night, had 8 pressures in that game, was absolutely phenomenal. Liam McNeil looked like a much better pass rusher last night with 1 sack to himself, as was John Kaminsky and Isaiah Bucks. After missing the first 2 games, essentially, right after missing both Seattle and Kansas City, Isaiah Bucks made his debut last week versus the Atlanta Falcons. Didn't play a ton, didn't have a lot of pass rushing success, but was a strong asset in the rushing attack. This week, played a little bit more, had a couple pass rushing snaps, and ended up getting home for the first sack of the game, actually, on Jordan Love, pushing them back and forcing a punt early on. And then Charles Harris shared a half a sack with Aiden Hutchinson near the end of the game as they both collapsed the pocket and got to Jordan Love at roughly the same time. Major takeaways from this game: the run defense continues to be elite. Aaron Jones had nothing on the ground. Jordan Love, outside of 1 QB draw, had nothing on the ground, had no room to escape. Obviously, A.J. Dillon, no room to run, nothing going on for the Packers run game last night. And eventually, they just decided to stop running the ball. It was probably the second, maybe early 3rd quarter when the Packers decided we're just not going to run the ball anymore. We're just not going to give it to A.J. Dillon. We're just not going to give it to Aaron Jones, and we're just going to throw the ball and see if the secondary can beat us. Turns out the secondary could beat them. Couple big plays, obviously the controversial large passing play at the end of the third quarter. Jerry Jacobs allowed a big pass, but other than those two, the Lions pass rush. But other than that, it may be one medium to deep pass from Christian Watson. The Detroit Lions secondary was very solid. They had a couple breakdowns at the start of the second half. Obviously, as I said, that first drive, there was the big play to Christian Watson. At the end of the third quarter, there was that big pass to Jaden Reed. However, other than that, other than really those 2 or 3 passing attempts, the Lions pass coverage was much better. Jerry Jacobs was in coverage pretty well all night. Like I said, the one big play is where most of his yards came from. Outside of that, he allowed probably about 4 catches for 20 yards and a touchdown, but again, came up with 2 picks, so more than made up for it. Cam Sutton was only targeted twice, allowed 1 reception for, I believe, 15 yards. He has been phenomenal all season long. Brian Branch was great in the slot. Tracy Walker and Ifeatu Melifonwu were great over the top. The pass rush got home. The secondary played very well, and the run defense shut down everything. The tight end coverage was significantly better. The Detroit Lions, through the first 3 weeks of the NFL, really struggled to cover tight ends and really struggled to stop quarterback runs. They did both last night. And last night, Packers tight ends, despite being projected to have a very big game from bettors and from over-unders and from everything like that, didn't really do anything. Their tight ends were less than effective, and they really weren't able to create separation. Jordan Love really wasn't able to get them the ball all that often, and they were significantly improved versus coverage in against tight ends. I think the biggest thing is the Detroit Lions finished their pass rush. Again, 5 sacks after a 7-sack performance in Atlanta. They have 13 sacks in the last 4 days. After having 0 versus Seattle, after having 0 versus Kansas City, they have had 12 sacks in the last 4 days. That is impressive. The pass rush has turned around. They're finally finishing plays. They're not allowing quarterbacks to step up anymore, and the defense looks significantly better for it. Going to the offensive side of the ball, overall takeaways, they were efficient. They didn't have any massive plays other than, I would say, the 40-yard rush by Khalif Raymond on the end-around/trick play. That was a very good call by Ben Johnson. It gave him a chunk play and was very good for them. But outside of that, not too many big plays. I think we're going to wait to see Jameson Williams get back before we're going to see a lot of those big chunk plays. Obviously, we've seen a couple, right? Khalif Raymond had a big one off the flea flicker. He had another one last night versus the Green Bay Packers on that end-around. He's really been the big play guy, the big touchdown or the big 40-plus yard guy, but I think we're going to see a lot more of those as the offense continues to expand, as some more playmakers get back and get comfortable. I think we're going to see the efficiency go up, but the big plays go up as well. The Detroit Lions were super successful in the red zone. They were, I believe, 100% from the red zone. They kicked 2 field goals and 4 touchdowns. They were absolutely on fire. It is really hard to stop David Montgomery behind this elite offensive line. Taylor Decker was back. Jonah Jackson was healthy. Frank Ragnow was good. Graham Glasgow was good enough. And of course, Penei Sewell on the right tackle is one of the best tackles in the NFL. That group, combined with the bowling ball of David Montgomery, just continued to run over and over the Packers. And in the red zone, they could do nothing to stop. And I think the big takeaway on offense is that their aggressiveness was perfect. Dan Campbell and Ben Johnson were on the perfect page on when to be aggressive, when to go for it, and when to settle for points. I think that 4th down opportunity at the very near end of the game, about 6 minutes left, where it was 4th and 3, they go out there. Obviously, everybody knows their tendency is to go for it on 4th down. They try to draw the Packers offside, try to use their own tendencies against the Packers, and it doesn't work. They go, they kick a field goal. Quay Walker makes a massive mistake, gives the Detroit Lions a fresh set of first downs inside the red zone for themselves. They run the ball 4 times. They get to 4th down. They decide, hey, we're at the 1. I know we just kicked a field goal. We just bled 3 more minutes off the clock. We are at the 1-yard line, and they have not been able to stop the run all day. And they go for it on 4th and 1 at the 1-yard line and end up punching it in for what would eventually really be the icing on the cake for an absolute dominating victory by the Detroit Lions. I think the aggressiveness was right when to go for it. I think they had a good mix of, punt here, kick a field goal here, go for it, on 4th down when it makes a lot of sense to do so. I think that was a much improved part of their game from what it was 2 weeks ago versus the Seattle Seahawks. It was improved versus Atlanta. I think it got even better on prime time versus the Green Bay Packers. With all that being said, that is all I have for you guys today. The Detroit Lions absolutely dominated Green Bay, as I said, a 34-20 victory. The Detroit Lions take a commanding lead in the NFC North Division race, looking for their first division title since 1993. It has been a long time coming. The Detroit Lions are currently Kings of the North as they lead the race, and they look to be the easy favorites to take this division so far. There's a lot of football left to play, but the Lions are out front, and they're looking very strong as is. So with all that being said, that is all I have for you guys today. Let me know down in the comments below your biggest takeaways from Thursday Night Football and how you feel about this team after 1 month of play. Very curious what you guys have to say, but with all that being said, if you've made it this far in the video, please consider subscribing to the channel. Please consider liking the videos. Helps the channel out a ton. And if you're 15 minutes into the Detroit Lions domination of the Green Bay Packers, you are clearly a Detroit Lions or a big football fan, and you likely enjoy the content. So if you could subscribe, that would help the channel out a ton. But with all that being said, that is all for you guys today. Thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, and as always, go Lions.